This is TNC Movie Nights and doing something a little different today. Something we've talked about a couple times on the show. We're doing some comedy breakdown. Of course, with me, as always, on the episodes, Alex, how you doing?
Oh well, man. Just cruising along. We're doing the same old stuff with the van, getting stuff ready to go. How are you doing?
Doing well. Doing really well. I just had a very, trying to think how to put it best. Very long week the week before, and not just like the work week, but like it was Easter weekend, and it didn't really feel like a weekend. It was like constant like running around, moving around. So it felt like I was just in this constant 2 weeks of just work. And I just really needed this last weekend so badly. I was having a really rough time getting through the end of last week, but that definitely helped out. Today for work went really fast, so it felt pretty good again. I just really need a little bit of a break just to kind of do nothing in a sense, but still get my own stuff done that I want to do. But yeah, doing much better, way better now.
Good to hear, man.
Thank you.
As Brandon said, we are sort of doing something. Let me see if I can get my camera. There it is. We're doing something that we've been talking about both on the show and behind the scenes for a while. This is a first episode in a long series that we plan on doing where we are going to break down specific genres by the decades because things change. You know, whether it's horror, suspense, drama. For us right now, it happens to be comedy. Things change. You know, movies from the 50s are not the same as comedies written today, or from the 80s, or the 90s, or even as early as like 9-10 years ago. So we thought, how cool would that be if we break down each decade and go over, you know, what was considered, in our case now, so we're doing comedies, what was funny then, and how things have changed, and what maybe wouldn't fly at all today, or what things we could learn from to do again, because maybe it's timeless, maybe it's not. And so we're going to sort of maybe once a month go and pick a decade and work our way up to the present and really talk about what it was. And for our first topic, I'm sure as you saw in the title of the episode, we are doing the 50s and sort of before. We're not going to start too far because we don't need to talk about the early 1900s for 5 weeks. So just pre-1960s comedies is what we're going to start with for this one.
Yeah, and it's so weird because the comedy feels so different, but at the same time, like there are a lot of rooting aspects from it. You know, as we were kind of just discussing the topic before the show today, different talking points, and that is something we really kind of hit on. That at first I thought, you know, 50s and before was just a lot of slapstick, you know, the silent movie comedy, the very physical humor, but that does kind of fall into some of today's stuff too. I do think physical comedy has kind of fallen off maybe a little bit in the last decade or two. You know, I'm sure we can all remember kind of in the late 90s, early 2000s with Jim Carrey, Adam Sandler, a lot of like big gestures and like some physical comedy here and there, especially with Dumb and Dumber, Billy Madison, The Mask, all that kind of stuff. Very physical humor, whether it's like getting hit on the head, falling down, all that kind of stuff. And it does really, the root of that is in that kind of 50s and right before with stuff like Abbott and Costello is personally the one for me that's like that big one that I can think of, especially because my dad now owns every single Abbott and Costello movie.
It's a good list to have, man. Some of those are really, really funny. And that's the thing, too, is, you know, you hear, and you were mentioning it, too, you hear, you know, oh my God, we're going to talk about movies from, well, now over, you know, 70 plus years ago. It's like, well, holy crap, they're so far removed. I don't even know. But it's really, some things haven't changed all that much. There's still people falling on their heads in comedies and people laughing at it. And maybe some movies that you thought are removed aren't as much. This is the era of the inspiration behind remakes and redos and all that stuff. So, you know, if you think, we were joking about it before the show, you're one episode of Key and Peele and an accidental remake away from just laughing at 50s humor at that point. And you're like, all right, well. The big difference being that, you know, Key and Peele, maybe they don't do blackface all the time because we've all sort of agreed that that's just really not cool. and we're not really going to do a deep dive into that, but
Yeah.
maybe not the 50s, but the before part of the 50s, and the 10s and the 20s and all that. That was a big thing, and that was just what comedy was, for not just all of comedy, but you could just paint your face black and do a disgusting stereotype and be like, haha, get it? And so we don't do that anymore because duh. But other things like slipping on a banana peel, or splitting your pants and stuff like that, you can totally see that stuff still today. And so I'm really excited to do a breakdown of this.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and it'll be kind of fun to kind of bounce back and forth between the different styles of comedy and then the things that did get remade. Um, but it is really weird to watch. I'm honestly kind of blanking on the person's name now, but the silent comedy thing I was just watching,
Buster Keaton?
Yeah, it is very weird just to kind of see the difference in that was kind of like I don't know, almost kind of like, I don't want to say just the peak, but that was like a big standing point of comedy, and it's so weird to see it without any words, because a lot of comedy of today has to do with how something is said, even sometimes more than what is said. There are those oh my goodness, I can't think of the comics names out there now. Shock comics, the ones that just, it's not exactly like, sometimes it is what they say, but it's also how they say it. It's just that their pacing of a joke really kind of hits different ways at times, and it's weird to kind of like, that's how I see comedy today, is how something is said rather than what is said, just when it catches you off guard. And it is crazy to see comedy that didn't have words. And it's kind of the funny situations people are in, just getting to watch it. It's so weird seeing the difference of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Buster Keaton is a big topic that we both want to talk about on this, because he was, I mean, what was he? He was from the 20, or no, yeah, he was from the 20s, and throughout, he was like the silent movie star. And if you don't know Buster Keaton, you definitely know some of the things that were inspired by Buster Keaton. I mean, one of the most famous being the toppling building. There's, in one of the sketches that he was in, or one of the movies he was in, there's a storm, he gets blown around, he stands up, and the whole building falls on him except for the tiny little window that he happened to be ending right where that was going to fall. But he's totally unscathed. That's Buster Keaton, man. So anytime you see something fall on someone in some ridiculous manner and they happen to be exactly in the right location, not get harmed, all comes from that. And it's so impressive back then, because CGI hadn't even been a thought. There was no, there's nothing. It was, we got to drop a building on this guy. It was, you take out the tape measure and you go, okay, here we go. How tall are you? How tall is that? Here's the window. Okay, stand in this square. If you move, you die. So don't move. And then he just didn't move, so he didn't die. And then another famous one from The General is him riding on a train and trying to clear the debris from the tracks, and like throwing one railroad tie to clear another one. You just got to nail that shot, man. And it's not, obviously there are some safety measures in place. He wasn't on just, they didn't just throw him onto any random moving train and say, hey, if you don't clear this debris, you're gonna, derail the train. But it's still, like, you have to hit the board with the other board enough to make it move, or else we got to redo this and we might break some stuff, including your arms and legs. And so I think a lot of physical comedy back then, I mean, props to the actors, because they just had to take a beating sometimes. If you wanted to film someone jumping off a building, you kind of had to jump off a building, or you had to do the cut where, hey, let's cut it as he's jumping and then we'll bring it back in. But if you see someone falling, they're just falling.
Yeah, and it is really cool to kind of see, we're so spoiled with CGI nowadays, and it is nice to have a little sense of, oh my goodness, what is the proper I'm losing terms today, and it's so sad.
A long day, man. Practical effects?
Thank you, practical effects. And you really just kind of see them in action movies now. Like Mad Max had some that were really cool, and it is nice to kind of see those every once in a while. And it's just crazy to think that comedy movies were kind of that big area of practical effects back in the day for physical comedy. I we'll do it someday, probably months or maybe even a year or two from now. But I don't know how action movies were in the 50s, if there even were action movies in the 50s. I'm sure there were, but yeah, no, it's really cool to kind of see the difference of how important that was to comedy back in the 50s and before.
Yeah, man, because, I mean, like we said, if you wanted to do something, you just had to do it. If you, ha ha ha, bit comedy, let's, throw a bunch of banana peels on the ground and watch a bunch of people fall. All right, how do we do that? Well, we throw a bunch of banana peels on the ground and we make a bunch of people fall. They probably know they're going to fall, but they still just got to fall. How are we going to drop a building on this guy? Drop a building on him. That's it. Film it. If he dies, that sucks, but anything for... Show must go on. And that's the other thing too is speaking of bits and stuff like that, a lot of humor back then, and not exclusively, it's we don't want to say all comedies, but a lot of the more famous ones tended to be a little bit more bit heavy and sketch comedy, and sort of like, here's 3.5 minutes of a scene, and then 9 out of 10 doctors recommend Camel cigarettes, and then we cut back and it's a totally different scene, and it's the same actors playing a totally different characters, a totally different story. You said it best when you said it's like watching them transition in like a musical or a stage play. It's the lights go down, bring out the scenery, bring it in, new scene. And then in some cases, in the comedies back then, it was new scene, new characters, new idea, whole new story. And we see that a lot, especially a little bit later on in what you were talking about, the Abbott and Costello days, where it was, here's 2.5 minutes, here's 4.5 minutes, here's 5 minutes, and sketch, sketch, sketch. Ta-da, there's your show.
Yeah, it is, it's just so weird to think about, too, because, today people complain about the kind of attention span of people and how weird it's gotten through time. Of back in the 50s, it was like, hey, we got to get these people like 3 to 5 minute skits. We got to make something funny in 5 minutes. That's crazy. We got to do it in 5 minutes. And now we're like, all right, we got 30 seconds TikTok. Let's go.
Yeah. And again, it's not exclusively the bit comedy, because I mean, even at the same time, let me say, I marked it down. Charlie Chaplin was from the 19-teens through the 50s, and so while Buster Keaton was doing his stuff, and then later on in the 40s and 50s when Abbott and Costello were doing their stuff, Charlie Chaplin doing his stuff too, and it was more feature-length films. And then as we got into the talkies, where it wasn't just how can we do physical humor, then it wasn't exclusively just bit. So you had that balance like you do now, but I think a lot of that comes from that transition, because when you're not speaking, a lot of your emotion has to come from what the viewer sees. And so if you don't have the luxury of being able to talk, and you don't want everyone to have to read a whole freaking novel while they're sitting in a theater, you have to show a lot of that through your physical motion. And one of the, I don't want to say it's easy, but one of the easier things to convey is humor. You don't have to have a convoluted plot. You can just have someone fall on their butt, and people can watch that, and it's universal too. Anyone speaking any language can go, ha ha, that was funny. But then as theater and movies and film evolved, so did the humor.
Yeah, and it's something else I really wanted to bring up too, as I mentioned before when we were talking about it, is going through all the different lists of like movies in the 50s and just going through some different synopses. It felt like there's 2 different things that would happen. Three different things that would happen. It was either you had 2 men or more in a movie and it was slapstick, or you had a man and a woman and it was kind of like semi-family humor, kind of like how much was like the wife messing up things, or maybe how, some senses like how, I don't know, some of it was like maybe how dumb the man was, like that humor started a little bit there too. Or the third one was, if there was a woman that was the main focus of the movie, it was like, oh my god, how much is she messing up life without a man? And that was pretty much the 3 elements of like comedy at that point. And it was just so weird to see those like so pinpointed in almost each and everything I was kind of going through.
Yeah, and we were joking before the show with this, but it wasn't like the, find your true self of like, she don't need no man. It was like, look at Sally over here. She doesn't have a husband in her life. See how terrible her life is? What a joke. She needs a man. Just like, ugh, that's another one of those things. It's not as intense as doing blackface, obviously, but that's another one of those things that really wouldn't age well. And there's a lot from the pre-60s everything that probably shouldn't come along for the ride, if we're being totally honest. It's pretty much a universally bad time if you didn't look like us. But that's not what we're breaking down here. But there are a few things like slipping on banana peels and way over the top physical humor. Not so much in the whoa, but like dropping a whole building on a guy or having him, falling off of a train. Sort of that extreme situational physical humor. Mm-hmm. That stuff has tried and true stuck with us through every decade. You can pick any very famous slapsticky based movie and it's following that similar like guide of hero, which in this case is just the goofiest guy on the screen, gets into more and more elaborate and even more elaborate situations where it's like, uh-oh, what's gonna happen? But really it's like, he's probably gonna die, but we're gonna solve it in a funny way and it's slapsticky. He fell off the train into a bush, he's okay. The house fell on him, but he was standing by the window, sort of that stuff. And, you can see it in movies made this year even.
Yeah. And again, it's just so weird kind of seeing the differences because, yeah, again, as I mentioned, like the side of women comedy was the how much can they mess up life without a man there. And then it just felt like some of the like men comedy is just like, it's almost like the man is so stupid, but how lucky can he get that he's not dead? Yeah. And that's just like the playoff exactly. That they do in the two. It's like men are stupid and women need men. It's like there's just like no like balance between if like women are witty or men are witty. It's just terrible.
It's like those the old Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry things where there's like some distracted person walking through like a construction site and they're just casually walking by and they're about to walk off the building, but then a steel beam comes up and saves them and oh my god, they're about to fall into a cement mixer, but then someone's tossing like something soft in the way and they just glide down completely oblivious. And that's where a lot of that inspiration came from, is the pre-60s comedies, especially the physical comedies. And there's one other thing that I want to mention too, and that was, we sort of hinted at it earlier, but a lot of comedies that we know well from, whether it's our childhood or even our parents' childhood, whatever, they came from movies in the pre-60s era. They came from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. Just a couple that I found. I mean, Cheaper by the Dozen. We hear that. We think Steve Martin, Funhouse, 12 Kids. Didn't come out in the 90s, man. Came out pre-60s. There was Angels in the Outfield. Came out, I think it was 52. Totally different movie. We don't think of the 1950s version of Angels in the Outfield. Yeah. Even Mr. Deeds was a remake. It was originally called Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, but it was the same person, same concept. And so you see Mr. Deeds and you're like, oh yeah, that was the golden age of Adam Sandler. Nope, that was the 50s. And then we just happened to see it again. And that's another thing where it's like, there's, and it's not just the comedy genre, horror, drama, all of it. Like even Scarface was a remake. And so you see, it might not be polished because we just didn't have that at the time, whether it's the ability to film things properly or portray a story well enough, or whatever the case may be. You see the original concepts there, and sometimes they're even like beautifully executed movies. I don't want to just bash them, but that's where a lot of the original concepts come from that are then remade into movies that are just so well known today. You see Cheaper by the Dozen, Mr. Deeds, Angels in the Outfield, even everyone's like, oh yeah, I know that movie. So again, not that far removed, not as far as you'd think you'd be.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. I'm just going through a full list, like movies from like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that when they got remade, and some of the movies in here, like it is shocking just to kind of know that they weren't original concepts.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Deeds is from the 30s? I don't know if it's from the 30s, but it's pre-60s. I know that. 38. Yes. Yep. But yeah, you're like, holy crap, that was not an original thought. And of course, some things, you know, you get the inspiration for it, but then it's a totally different movie. But also
Wow.
sometimes it's not.
Did you know the 2010 Karate Kid was a remake? Just kidding. Just kidding.
Who's Ralph Macchio? But yeah, it's not as far away as you think it'd be. It's sort of the whole idea I think that we're getting at here is that whether it's some of the premises of physical comedy and slapstick humor that you can even see throughout today, or sketch comedy and bits, and we'll talk a little bit more about Evan Costello because I know you're a huge fan and I'm a big fan of him.
I will say, I'm not a huge fan. My
movies.
dad is a huge fan.
Oh, that's different.
He is a crazy big fan of Abbott Costello. I'll be honest.
Funny, man.
I've tried. A couple of them get me. It's just some of the humor is like kind of dry, and it's surprising. Like some of the things are dry. A lot of it is pretty like just physical humor though, or just like the one everyone always thinks of is Who's on First. It's like it's right in front of your face. How do you not understand? And it's like that kind of stuff. So it's like some of it is pretty good, but yeah, no, my dad. I've grown up with a lot of Abbott and Costello.
Oh yeah, I also really love the 7 into 28, it's 13 sort of thing. Calling Alexander 4444, that's a really funny one. The I'll bet you that you're not here. So many different sketches and bits are just classic. But absolutely, yeah, that was clever. And so you watch it now and you're like, this is a cheese fest. But I mean, it's kind of funny because like, haha, not what you expected. And you're right, a lot of it is like it's right there and they're just gonna dance around it for 3.5 minutes and that's the joke. And some of them maybe don't age the best, and some of them, you know, maybe you roll your eyes at, but damn, some of Evan Costello is just funny, man.
Yeah, I think we can jump another 30 years from now when it is 100 years at that point, and we'll still look back at some of that comedy and be like, that's still funny. Like, it still is clever.
It's going to be crazy that in our lifetimes, Who's on First is going to be 100 years old.
Yeah.
Oh. It's also crazy that we're oh my godding over something that happened like way before we were born, like decades and decades. And we're
it's
like,
just
can
such
you
a big
believe?
staple,
Yes, I can believe that something that was made 40 years before I was born will turn 100 before I'm dead. That's actually how math works.
It looks like the original sket was skit. Yeah, skit. I don't know.
Long day.
Yeah. It looks like it was
45 or something.
1936, if I'm not mistaken.
I was way off. Good lord.
Yeah, it looks like it's 1936 is what I'm seeing on this site. But if that is true, yeah, I keep saying 1936 on this page everywhere. I'm looking for a date. But yeah, it'll be in 15 years. It's 85 years old right now. If that is the true case.
Yikes. It's so funny that in that same time, you know, what was it 40, I think? Yeah, in 1940, Charlie Chaplin with The Great Dictator came out. You know, you have in the same area, which shows sort of the diversity of comedy back then, and it wasn't just a one-trick pony. You have slapstick. You have some people were still watching silent movies and stuff like that. It was great. Slapstick, silent bits, and then you still have these like sort of satirical with a message. It's comedy, but like there's some important stuff behind it. Like it's not exclusive to right now or a few years ago. There was people still trying to say things back then, and some things didn't need to be said, some things did. So it's not as one trick pony as you would think. You do a little bit of a dive into it, and you're like, oh, it's kind of comedy. It's kind of timeless, and you can go back way before then. There are jokes written in caves, and like there were like deciphering ancient hieroglyphics, and there were fart jokes. Like, comedy is timeless, man, and it really hasn't changed that much since the idea of human beings. It's some stuff's just funny, and some stuff's always gonna be funny. Some stuff, though, maybe don't do that anymore. And and that's what I love about this series is we get to talk about both of those. We get to look back and go like, God, I cannot believe that was published. But then other things be like, holy crap, this could have come out yesterday, and I'd be like, this is hilarious. And that's comedy, baby. That's all it is. I love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun just jumping through all the different eras, times of comedy, and then even when we get into action, drama, and horror as well. I'm sure you're really excited for that. We'll probably do that one last.
Oh, yeah, great. Can't wait to review all of those movies I love watching so much. Although it will be fun to do the early ones, like Creature from the Black Lagoon, or some Boris Karloff. Or...
Yeah, it's definitely going to be pretty good.
Enough of that
I don't remember the movie we're doing. I know...
We are going to be watching... this is all from Sahara. She heard we were doing pre-60s, and she was like, you should watch Arsenic and Old Lace. She loves it. I haven't seen it yet. I read the synopsis of it. It seems pretty funny, and it's not one of those just slapsticky bit comedy, so it'll be fun to watch something that's a little bit out of the zone of a lot of the stuff we were talking about today. But yeah, that'll be Arsenic and Old Lace. We'll be reviewing that, well, tomorrow, for us. Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
That'll be really fun.
Awesome. Well,
but
Alex,
until we review that,
no, it's you this time. Where can the people find us?
Well, Brandon, the Discord's not going to be picking this up. The people can find us. One-stop shop this stuff, man. Just go to thenerdchambers.com. Nothing spelled weird. It's the word word nerd, and then the word chambers. We all know it. .com. Don't forget that part. It's pretty crucial. That's where you can find all of our stuff. You can meet the team if you haven't met us yet. Pretty much everyone's even been on this show by now, so if you haven't met the team, you can meet them there. You can see all the articles that are posted there, all the content, whether you're into Pokemon card openings, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, nerd stuff, video games. Oh my god, there's so much! And if you wanted to visibly, out in the public eye, support your boys, you can get merch. I noticed it took almost a year to notice this, but my screen is flipped. That's why I have to point there to go to you, but really you're there on my screen. Mm-hmm. Every time I hold up the merch, the logo's backwards.
Yeah.
Because I mirrored. I just noticed that when I watched the last episode. But it looks like, put this in a mirror and it looks like this. His are fine.
Yeah, so on my screen it's right. It does, but on your side it looks off. But yeah. People know. It's good.
Yeah, so you can do that. If you're watching us, it's the YouTube. If you're listening, it's the wherever you want to listen to us. If you haven't seen a movie from the pre-60s comedy era, go give it a shot. Go Google who's on first. Go check out some Evan Costello. Let us know if it tickles your fancy a little bit. And if not, maybe the 60s will do it for you. Who knows?
And if not,
we'll have to tune in to find out. Yeah, because sometimes it's weird. That's all I got. I think I hit them all. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah.
What do you think, Brandon?
It's little stuff like that. That would have worked in the 50s. Yep. All right.
Oh, man.
All right. We're going to stop laughing at our own jokes now, so we'll see you for the review.
Yeah. Bye. Alex, Brandon.